So Proverbs 29:11. I'm pretty sure that everybody just has that verse memorized. No, they don't.
No.
Proverbs is a really good book, though. It has a lot of wisdom in it.
It is.
In the ESV, it says, "A fool vents his spirit, but a wise man holds himself back." In the King James, it says, "A fool utters his mind," and so it basically is talking about sharing your thoughts, or like it may say dreams and all that kind of stuff. It talks about that it's unwise, that it's foolish to share everything that you have going on in your mind and your life, what you're dreaming about. And I found that to be true.
Is it on my dream or like
Just
where you might be upset about something?
No, just sharing your heart, like just that it's unwise is everything you think. Like just share all your thoughts,
Okay.
like that there is something good about keeping things back, holding things to the vest, right? And then sometimes we don't like people who do that, because at times I have been accused of both. Right, that I hold some things back, and then also oversharing, right? And I just thought, when you hear that, like, what do you think the wisdom is in that comes to mind, and how have you learned that, like, to pick and choose your places on when you feel that you're really going to share some of the things that are kind of deep into you, like maybe some of the dreams that you have or some of the hopes. Like, how have you learned that throughout life that it might not be a good time to share some things? Like, it's not I'm talking about nothing negative. Like, it's just that this is not a good time to share this, maybe because it's in its infancy, maybe because it's not fully fleshed out, maybe because it's just not ready and you might have learned you not need to protect it, or like knowing when to share, and then just how that scripture comes to be true, that like it's foolish to share that. Like, when have you thought, yeah, I probably shouldn't have shared that was foolish?
I think it's different when you're talking about, like, you put the caveat on it where it's not negative. In other words, I think, because sometimes when people say this, it's in a sense of it's better to be passive and not address issues. That's not what you're saying.
Nope.
This has nothing to do with that.
Nothing to do with that at all.
From a visionary's perspective, as somebody who's dreamed big and had big visions as a leader, I know what it's like to see something that nobody else sees.
Okay.
And I know you know that too, because we share that same insight, and we have shared visions, shared dreams. There's even pieces of it even today we haven't even told our whole staff about. Like, and so I understand how it depends on the context, the context of the audience. I think, in other words, there are certain things that I think I'll share stuff with you that I wouldn't share with other people, because I know you're a dreamer too, and you see what I see, and you think like I think about, like, especially when we're talking about leading a church together. In that particular context, you and I can share stuff with each other that may not make it out of our office.
Correct.
Because we have to flesh it out, and we may talk about it for 8 to 10 months and get to a conclusion about it together before we actually will voice it outside of the room. And I think there's wisdom in that, because I think a lot of times people who are big dreamers, and they just are constantly talking about what's next. And every time you hear them, every time you interact with that person, they're telling you, hey, man, I got this next thing, and here's what I'm going to do next, here's what I'm going to do next, here's what I'm going to do next. And you hear that over and over and over again. And then every time you hear them say, they never talk about them completing the last dream. Or them executing the last dream, or seeing that dream come to reality. All they're doing is talking about what they're going to do next. And so after a while, you label that person a dreamer, and that's has a negative connotation to it. And
that's a trap that I have fallen into before.
Right.
Where I did not realize why that was negative. Like, I understand that it is,
right,
but I did not know that that's what I was building towards a negative label. And so I'm glad you said that, because it is when you hear a dreamer, you don't think of it in a positive light. That's what I think is so funny about that.
Well, and it's a funny conversation, because it goes back to the first time my wife ever met you. And she asked you that question.
So how does she phrase it? I remember, but I don't remember how she phrased it.
She said, "Are you a dreamer or are you a visionary?"
That's very true.
And because she worked with a person that was a dreamer, but could not really execute at all.
And I was so shocked that she asked me that.
And so
That was such a good question.
And I was embarrassed that she asked you that. But
Why were you embarrassed?
But this is my wife. She just gonna. But your wife came at me pretty direct too.
Yes,
it was a good. It was
great.
healthy.
It was.
But it was. But I, like for her, she sees the difference, and I think the difference between a dreamer and a visionary is they're both really dreamers. But the visionary just knows when to talk about his dreams or her dreams.
Correct.
And I think the dreamer is just constantly talking about everything that's running through their head. That's impossible. If you're a true dreamer, it's impossible for anybody to execute. It's impossible for me to execute on all the things that run through my head.
100%.
There's just no way.
Yes.
All the things that I want to touch, do, build, make.
It's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
Never going to happen.
Because I just can't, like, you physically can't. And so
Right.
I don't talk about it until I know I can execute it. Now, that's just my nature, but it's also, you learn that at an early age as you try to lead and as you start talking about things and you're looking around the room and you're like, they don't see what I see. And so, like, it's hard to get people to come with you in that dream. And maybe sometimes part of the dream can be brought out early. And then once that becomes executable, like it becomes something that the team is able to pull off or that you're able to pull off and you see results from that, then you can say, okay, well, here's the next phase of that dream. And so I think healthy leadership from a visionary perspective is being able to not only have the vision and see the vision, not only have the dream and be passionate about the dream, but it's also see steps that are capable of being accomplished in order to achieve maybe the first step of that dream, to feel out like the vision of that dream over time in small incremental steps, and maybe you don't talk about the other thing that you see. And there's so many times where I'll catch myself, or I have caught myself over the years in ministry, in meetings with our elder board or with staff or with whatever, or in a leadership group, and there are certain things I'm thinking that I just don't talk about because I just know the room's not ready. Because it's overwhelming sometimes when you throw out big dreams to small-minded people. And sometimes people can see what they know, and they have a hard time seeing beyond what they already know. A dreamer is not limited by what they know. A dreamer is only limited by their imagination. And I think being able to transition from a dreamer to a visionary is a vital step, and a lot of it has to do with communication and being able to execute step-by-step accomplishments to fulfill the dream.
Yeah, I didn't know that early on, and I mean, I guess we've talked about it a little bit, but not a lot. That I was just reckless in that because, as you know, and as you always tell people about me, that my mind is going 1,000 miles a minute. And there is I'm just connecting dots and seeing things in everything, right? And the excitement. To me, the excitement of a new thought, like that's exciting to me. Like, first of all, like a new thought excites me, or like a new way of thinking about something. Like, we're doing this sermon series that we're getting ready to do after Easter that I thought like we at first blush thought was kind of interesting, right? And then we get to the last sermon and we realize that this is a very, very unique take on how we're preaching this last sermon out of Acts.
Right.
And it was just like kind of moving that around, and then like you even started clapping when we've got the first like. But it's fun to see, like, man, I don't believe that we would find anybody preaching how we're gonna preach this part of this text. Like, I don't believe that you will find it anywhere.
Right.
And that's incredible because there's been thousands of hundreds of thousands of sermons preached about these texts. And so, but for me, I'm excited by the idea of a new thought. And then when I'm excited about something, I have a very small circle. And so I want to share that. I like to share my excitement, my passions with people. And it has been my experience that you just get that you have a third ear or a third eye going out your face, or the lack of interest, because it's just like it's like those movies where you have the guy who has the failed inventor, but he keeps on inventing stuff, so people don't pay attention to him anymore.
Right.
But like he really is onto something.
Then all of a sudden he lands on
and
something.
So like
yeah.
I feel that, and it's just
I Shrunk the Kids.
it's very disheartening to a dreamer.
Yes.
It really is, because the dream is what's so exciting. Like, the dream is so exciting. And the journey to the dream can be exciting, but by the time we're almost to completion of that, that's now it's become a reality. For the dreamer, we're on to the next thing,
right?
Because we're bent to see things that are beyond reality. So once it starts materializing, once it's coming down, like that part of what my creativity, my gift is finished. And I've just realized that it is maturity, that it is looked upon, that just sharing your dreams that don't really have any substance yet, that really don't have a pathway. Like you said, a dream to vision is the pathway, how it can be done, how you can execute on it. That we want to get the visionary leader because he has that, and then that's respected. And so like this is the negative, so you're keeping your mouth shut. That has been a hard thing for me, because some of the things that I dream about, I don't believe I'll ever will have time to accomplish in my life or be able to have the resource or whatever, right? But I think that maybe sharing it might spur somebody else on. Or maybe when I'm sharing the dream, you will have something different that you can add to it, and it becomes a better thing together, like through collaborative effort, just think different, think a different thought. But I think what's really funny that you said, I never thought about that, is that I always wondered why sometimes it almost, if you are that way, it can almost be aggressive. Like people can almost, it can almost be like you're saying like 4 little words sometimes. And you just said sometimes like small-minded people or people who aren't thinking that way, like they don't even want to think about what could be outside the realms of what is. Yeah. And I haven't ever thought about that like I'm almost like I'm unintentionally ruffling some feathers. And I'm like, what? We're just talking about something that could be. Why is this angering, or why do I need to read the room? You know, it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't even seem like I understand why that would be, but the way you just said it to me made sense, that like it almost is challenging someone's paradigm, and no one likes that to be like, no one wants that. Stop wrestling the water.
Well, I think when I say small-minded, I don't mean to be.
No, I know. I'm correct. You're not trying to be mean.
I'm not saying it in a derogatory way.
No.
I mean, some people, it's healthy to have people who are willing to follow. And people are willing to follow a leader who has a dream and a vision. But I think the leader with the dream and the vision has to be careful about how they communicate that. Because people are very comfortable with their normal.
Yes.
They don't like change. People,
correct,
by nature, just will push back against change organizationally, in your relationships at home, parenting, whatever it is. When there's a change, it's going to take a lot of time for the person who sees the need for the change and can see the future that's better. That person, it's going to take a lot of work to get that group or the people that you're around to come along and to begin to get glimpses of it. You can't tell them the whole thing, but you can just tell them a little bit. If you tell them just enough to take them to the next step towards the dream, and then you tell them the next step, and then you tell them the next step. It's kind of like when I was leading through change here way before I ever knew you, and we were old church in downtown. We sold an old building, and we moved into our associational building for a while, then a movie theater, and then into this building as the transition of revitalization took place. And every time we made a move into a new physical space, I changed something else about how we were doing church. Like I took another small incremental step towards the fulfillment of the vision that I could see that they couldn't see. But what's fascinating to me, I was thinking about this over the weekend. We had a great Easter weekend as a church. We've seen God do amazing things, and we're just now getting to what I saw, 20 years ago when I first went into ministry.
Right.
We're just now starting to get there, and it's taken that long for me as a leader to find another leader who sees what I see and thinks like I think, and then we've got a great team around us for the first time in a long time. For me as a leader, we're all moving lockstep, and God is blessing that concerted effort for His glory that we're actually putting forward together. And so I was smiling thinking about, man, we're finally getting there. Like it took that long to get all the pieces in place. I never lost sight of that, but at times I feel like I didn't know if I would ever be equipped, like you're talking about, resource-wise, people-wise, whatever, to actually accomplish that. And I think that's why when true visionaries who can see a dream, execute a dream, when they find somebody else who's like that, like those people gravitate towards each other because there's safety in being able to, I can share or you can share. And it's just other people in your life who you're close to, and you talk about other intimate things, but they just may not be able to see what you see in that. And it makes it difficult to have those conversations because they look at you, like you said, like you have a third eye, or like, man, that's going to be hard, or why would you do that? Or, it's always a, and for the dreamer, that's hurtful.
Yeah.
For the dreamer, that's a pain, that's a wound. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes true dreamers and true visionaries are killed in their infancy.
Yes.
And they just become a person who just follows because they threw out some dreams early and they got pushed back. And I think that's one huge thing about parenting is
really true.
Your kids are born dreamers.
Yes.
And so foster that in them. Let them be dreamers. Let them do imaginary play. Let them like have big dreams about what they can accomplish. And sometimes I'll watch my granddaughter who's 3 and she's a toddler, and she'll attempt some things physically that she's incapable of doing.
Talk about that.
Because she's a dream, like and so I don't say, hey, you can't do that. I just let her figure it out, And so and I think those are the things that I think in some ways our culture, sometimes our educational system, like, says, no, here's the lane. You walk this way. Here's what you do. You do this way. And I love to ask the question, well, why? Why are we doing that? We both are fascinated by that question. Well, what if we did it? What if we looked at it like nobody else is looking at it? What would that feel like?
But the only what I don't understand about that is I do agree 100% that our culture and our natural bent is to push into the norm and do away with the dream. Mm-hmm. But my question, I guess, would be why do we do that when we always celebrate and look for the new? Like we applaud the new way of doing things, right? Like we went from dial-up to broadband to high speed, right? Which allowed us to get a phone book to Google, which allowed us to go from like Zanga and blog places and MySpace to Facebook to Twitter to Instagram. Like so somebody had to say we can do it better. And then we applaud and we appreciate that. So then why does it make any sense? I'm saying, like, then why would we not want more dreamers? Like we marvel at the space race. We marvel at how small phones are now. We marvel at how great cameras and we didn't. I mean, if there's no dreamers, we'd all still have tube TVs. We enjoy what is produced by that. Wouldn't you think we'd want to continue to accelerate and not extinguish that? Because a dreamer is going to find a cure for cancer. Somebody that keeps status quo is not going to do that. So it just makes no sense to me.
I get that, and I think our culture in some way does reward that on the back end once the dreamer has proved his or her point.
That's such a good point. On the back end.
Once the iPhone has sold a couple million units, then they're like,
you're a genius.
Oh, this might actually work.
So
we took an iPod and we put a phone in it. What's that iPod?
Dude, it's brilliant.
You know what I'm saying?
But it's brilliant.
But a lot of people thought that was ridiculous.
But do you realize when the iPod Touch came out?
Yes.
I literally said, why don't we just make it into a phone? I thought it was the dumbest thing to get. I was like, you already have it already here. So to me, it was like the next thing to happen.
The next evolution. Yeah,
and so so it's funny that people had to sit there and be like, oh, I don't think it's gonna work. You already have 3 devices in your pocket.
Yeah, or the idea that you can stream TV.
Dummy.
You can stream TV.
Right.
Like you made a joke from the stage the other day. Who still watches live TV? Because streaming is so much better.
Right, it is so much better.
It's a la carte. You get to watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it.
Right.
And I just feel like, but there's somebody who had to say, what if?
But on the back end, I love what you said. On the back end, that's when it's applauded.
And as long as that's happening somewhere and it doesn't affect me, and then I can take advantage of it once it's a proven thing, then it's fine. But if it's somebody in my life, somebody in my church, somebody in my home who's saying, I don't think the status quo is working.
Okay.
And I think we need to make some changes.
Then that affects me.
And here's a dream I have about what we can become.
Yeah.
Then that affects me personally. And it's going to cost me sacrifice. I'm going to have to change what I expect. I'm going to have to change what I know. I might have to change what I love. I might have to give up some preferences in order to see the thing win. See my marriage win, see my parenting win, see my church win. And so people, when it, not in my backyard, it's been the whole thing, right? We all want landfills, but we don't want them behind our neighborhood, That's really but we all need landfills. And the world culturally, like, we need dreamers.
That's
we
so
need
true.
people that can think, you know what, I bet we could climb that mountain. You can't climb that mountain. It's too high. Like, the air's too thin up there. No, I bet we could figure out a way. I bet we could climb that mountain.
Why do you want to climb that mountain?
We need those people
Yeah.
to push us to the top of the mountain.
Right.
And I think, the biblical story is filled with people who could see a vision. Joshua says, "Hey, we're going to march around Jericho, and then we're going to scream, and the walls are coming down." Consecrate yourself today, because tomorrow the Lord's going to do wonders. Man, what a dreamer, right?
Yes, sir.
Hey, he and Ethan and Caleb go in. All the other 8 spies, what did they see? They saw like impossibilities. They came back. Man, we can do this.
God's already given it to us.
They were dreamers. They were visionaries because they could see what nobody else could see.
Right.
And I think that's not only does I think the story of God need dreamers and visionaries, but I think like just culturally human, like we need visionaries.
And the thing that gets me, I think that got me early on, and it still bites me in the butt now, just not as much. I've tried to be better about it. Is that I feel like when I hear those stories and we hear the scripture, it feels like they're left for us to inspire us to keep dreaming, right? And so then I feel like sometimes then we just need to share. Like I just need you to try to see what I can see. But as I've learned, is sometimes sharing and oversharing, it doesn't have the response I think it has. Like you said, you think it's like let me give it to you so I can paint the picture, because maybe you can't see it, but like I can. What do you think? And it's like crickets. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? You know what I'm saying? And so I think I think that's what I'm saying too, is that it goes back to what you're saying, like a time and place, right? Like step by step. Like you could see what Quest was looking like when you were in the building until when you got into this building. That was a process, but you still had to walk through and share piece by piece.
Oh yeah,
because as inspiring as it was, and as much as you go back now and it's an inspiring story, you didn't feel that you could share it all right then because you felt like people would like. I think it's just crazy to me because it's such a good story, and whenever you tell it now, everybody loves it.
Yeah,
but you were afraid if you did it then, it would kill it. And that's why I'm saying that's what's so interesting about.
And it was hell to live through, because a lot of the people couldn't see it,
but they also didn't find it inspiring. That's what you're saying.
No.
Like they also didn't find it to be encouraging, because it's meant to be encouraging.
Because it challenged what they knew. It challenged what they were comfortable with. It challenged their normal. It challenged their preferences about church. It challenged the place that they called church. It challenged all of that, and so that's very unsettling to
Correct.
people. Especially when you look at a church that's made up predominantly of widows who are senior adults.
Yeah.
And in their lifespan, think about what changed. We went from dial-up to a smartphone.
Yeah.
Like that technology changed dramatically in their life. Everything about the world changed dramatically. And they've also lost their husbands. They've lost their spouse. And so the one thing in that whole time that had not changed was the church and their church. And so now I'm coming along and trying to say, hey, we're going to change this too. And no matter how good and how gaudy that dream might have been, it was still a big risk and a big sacrifice for them to say, yeah, we'll go chase that with you.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I appreciate the overwhelming majority of them
100%.
that did.
Of course.
But they did it begrudgingly, and there was many, many, many battles along the way, not because it was a bad vision, but simply because the vision was calling them to sacrifice. But I think there's great power for a man or a woman in a marriage that's struggling to say, I have a vision of peace in our home, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get us there, whatever sacrifice it takes for me to get there. I'm willing to do that. I think it takes great visionary passion for a parent to say, our kid's going down a bad road, and we've obviously got to a place that's unhealthy. And there's got to be a way forward. And I know there's resources out there, and I have a vision for what it can be. And I'm willing to go through the hard work and the difficulty of finding the steps that'll get us to that future that I see. And I think in any walk of life, sometimes there's a call for us to be a visionary about a better future. I'm living in a life of rebellion, and I'm living apart from God. I have to be a visionary about my spiritual life to say, there is a pathway of internal peace for me. Like the testimony we had at Easter, the guy was sharing in our testimony this idea that he had chased sobriety and he thought sobriety was going to bring him peace. But what he really found, Like he had a vision for peace for his life. And that vision led him to the cross and led him to Jesus. And it was in Jesus that he found his peace. And then in that peace in Christ, he was able to find sobriety. And I think there has to be this shift in the paradigm. If you need a different future, if there's some visionary necessity in your life, some dreaming necessity in your life, then there has to be something that says, okay, what I'm currently doing is not working. There has to be a different pathway, and it's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take work, but as a visionary for a better future, I'm willing to do that work.
And the bottom line is that what I have learned is that people want you to be from Missouri. They want you to show me.
Yeah.
And like, you just got. I've started to learn to read the room, because I have said a lot of things for a long period of time, and so it's more like, okay, just start putting forth some action in some of that, into some of those areas, and then letting it come to fruition, because it's going to be what it's going to be. Like, I think for me, a lot of times you want to try to get a little bit of validation. You want to try to get a little bit of buy-in on your dream. Like, hey, I'm not crazy. Does this make sense? Would you support this? And I think that like when you have a lot of those out there, it's kind of like, oh, whatever. You're just spitballing. So then I think like you have to put in the blood, sweat, and tears by yourself sometimes. And I think like that's the thing that you and I know, that leading in any area, when you truly are leading, is very lonely, because it's work that you have to do a lot of times by your own self. Like if you want to turn your spirituality around, a lot of times that's going to be in your own quiet time, when you are battling with your dark nights of the soul with you and God, for your kids, for your marriage, for your own self. When you want to do that, when you want to move up in your job, if you feel like, hey man, I really feel that I could do that, like there's probably some things you're going to do behind the scenes. It always kind of happens behind the scene. And like you said before, a lot of times you just gotta not. I think the wisdom from the proverb is what you said, that when you speak too soon, when that fool utters it, it puts it out there to be killed in its infancy. And so I don't think it's foolish to have dreams. No. I think that we want us to have dreams, but I think that what it's saying is that you need to realize that a lot of these dreams need to be worked out in the quiet, in the dark, in the background, and then it's going to eventually make enough noise on its own. Quest is doing what we wanted it to do in our heart, a lot of it now, by nature. Our staff and some people surprised me this Easter with something that I had wanted to happen since the first time I got here at Quest. And it had bubbled out to enough people where they went ahead and made it done without me. Because that has already just, who I am is permeated into our staff. And so that was funny, and that was a blessing, because that was just like, they took pride in being like, hey, that thing you had in your mind that you shared with us, that we all kind of laughed and tried to figure it out, we were able to do it. And so for all the dreamers out there, I just want them to know that you need to keep dreaming dreams. And it's okay that you don't know and have all the pieces. God can bring you the pieces. But for all the people out there around some dreamers, it's okay to hold them accountable, but listening every once in a while is not bad at all.
There's a symbol of our dreaming together, and it's the ice cream truck. And so you had a vision for, like, what if a church had an ice cream truck years ago? Yeah. I had read a story about a police department, I think it might have been in Boston, that bought an ice cream truck and was going around giving out free ice cream
in the community.
And this is before I met you.
Yeah, I didn't even heard about this.
And I read it, and I was like, man, that would be awesome if a church had an ice cream truck.
Right.
Like, what if we did that? And then lo and behold, like, that's a dream I had. I hadn't uttered it to anybody because
neither had I.
People would look at me and think it's crazy.
I had never said anything about that either.
And so we come together, and then we start talking about ice cream trucks. And there's been a lot of moments where you will say something or I'll say something, and it's something that the other of us have already thought about, but never really talked to anybody else about.
Correct.
And so, yeah, it's sometimes God might send you another dreamer to work with, and you can dream together. And, we just went and picked up the ice cream truck today. I mean, it's happening, right? But it took somebody else catching that vision, and somebody saying, "Hey, you know what? I want to buy the ice cream. I want to pay for the ice cream truck." So it's another dreamer who got caught up in our dream. And he said, "Yeah, that dream, like that's kingdom glory. Like we can do some great things with that. So let me help with that. Let me resource that dream. Let me equip that dream." And like you're saying, if you can see somebody's heart, and that's easy to see. You can see somebody's heart, and you know that they're for good, and they're expressing a dream. Take time to listen, because God may be speaking in that dream, and don't discount it. Don't belittle it. But I think if you are a dreamer, like you're saying, sometimes you can communicate a dream simply by execution.
Yes.
As opposed to saying, "Hey, here's the vision I have. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm seeing." Especially if it's something like, there's something that I've told you I've just determined to show to somebody in my life.
Yes.
Just by me doing something.
Correct.
And without me saying I'm going to do it, I'm just going to start doing it.
Correct.
And I have a dream.
Yes.
And I'm just going to simply execute differently.
Yes.
And then watch the results. And then I'm actually communicating that vision and that dream.
Without saying anything.
Without ever saying anything about it.
Correct.
And I think there's something to that, to be able to say, okay, if I really believe in this, I'm passionate about it, what skin am I willing to put in the game to actually see it come to fruition and see it come to completion? And then the dream is actually communicated, and the results will be whatever the results are.
And the funny part about the ice cream truck, I hate to keep going on the story of the ice cream truck, but I think it's one of the most tangible things that we have recently about all of this, is that I think that we shared the ice cream truck story a little too early to the church.
Probably.
Because at first they laughed. It was laughable.
Even some of our staff were like,
and some people joked about it. But what was funny about it is that you and I both, because we had each other, were able to know that we still believed in what it was.
Yeah.
Because I had finally found somebody who understood that. But the reason why I bring it up is that a few of the people who laughed it off, a few months later after we let it die down, they started bringing it back up. Because sometimes people might laugh, but they might get in their car and say, "Man, that's ridiculous. That's silly." But they're thinking about it.
Right.
And it's that little bit of a seed. And I think that's what you're talking about. Like, it's okay. So for the other dreamer, you don't be bitter. Be open. Like, for me, I had to learn, like, it's okay. Let stuff breathe. God's going to work it out. Like, I just got to be faithful to keep rowing the boat. Like, that's all he's called me to do. Just keep rowing the boat. Let's just not put the oars down. As long as I can get up today and row, I have an opportunity to see it. And so it's been fascinating for me over the last year and a half, 2 years, to then see people come along to where it's not funny anymore. People are talking about it. People are praying about it. People are sending us ice cream trucks. People are talking about they want to give us money for the ice cream truck. People are then looking for it. We have the truck. And now everybody in our church is excited about it.
Right.
Like, everybody in our church thinks that this is the number one thing they can't wait to serve on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so for you and I, it's like, I'm not saying I told you so. It's just like, man, right, it's nice. You're sharing in that dream. And so I just feel like, I always say, a lot of people quit and give up too soon. But it's okay. Like, if you don't get the dream right away, don't shun it. Maybe give it a little bit of time for yourself and pray about it. And then also, if you are the dreamer, read the room and let it lie. Because when we brought that up and it kind of was like, it's funny, I didn't say anything about it again. Like, I was like, I'm leaving this one. Because this one was really close to my heart. Like, I really could see this. Like I can see us in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Like, I can see it clear as day. Like, the vehicle is wrapped. I'm handing out. I know that's going to happen.
Right.
So it's like, it's fine. It's just a matter of time. And so, we also let other things happen. Like our church over the last 2 years has changed. There's been other wins behind the scenes. Going back to what we're talking about, like, sometimes you have to just do the work.
The fulfillment of other crazy ideas that we had.
Yes, little ones, little stacking upon stacking. So now it seems like now the ice cream truck does not even seem as crazy as it was 2 years ago because what we're doing was crazy 2 years ago.
Right.
Our reality now, they would have laughed at us 2 years ago. They did laugh at us 2 years ago.
Right.
And so like now who we are, it now it's like, yeah, of course you're gonna have a camel at the next event. Sure, you're gonna have a water slide. Like people, nobody's gonna.
Of course, you're gonna have a roller coaster. I mean, yeah.
Right. Exactly, and that's okay. But I love that because that then gives you the credibility to keep dreaming. Like I said before, the reason why I love our relationship so much is you fan the flame of my creativity and dreaming. Like you want me to keep popping out the crazy, the better, and you want to take it.
Yeah.
And then when we decide on something, how God's gifted you is you're able to actually say, I think I know how we can make this into a reality. And that's what I love about our relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about our dynamic. And so like sometimes you need that person. You need that person who believes in you to allow you to dream that, yeah, you can see something, but then you also need to believe and trust to give that dream to somebody who can actually help make it into a fruition. Right. Because I really think that what's very rare and why a lot of organizations fail and why a lot of churches fail is that you don't get both people in one person all the time. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Oh yeah, there's been studies done in corporate world. They did in corporate world that I think it's only like 4% of leaders can actually have a dream, have a vision, and then implement steps to create it. Usually people are either one or the other. They're either the linear thinker system guy or gal, or they're the dreamer girl guy or guy.
Correct.
And they're not. Finding both in one person is very difficult. It's very rare.